Shock Piece: The Search for Freedom, a novel by C. Nguyen. Chapter 16: First Currency Change. September 1975. Another public announcement was being made. Drin was sure. She was woken up by it. It seemed that in the controlled world of the new Vietnam, citizens' activities were forever being dictated by the PA system. Time to get up. Time for morning exercise, comrades. Time to go to the weekly meeting at unit level. Each household has to have one representative there. Don't be late. Time to go to group meeting for self-report. Time to go to do labor contribution at group level. Time to do labor contribution at school level. Time to do labor contribution at party member level. Time to go to group meeting for political study. Time to go and buy rice. Time to buy food. Drin sighed. So many times in her daily life, she had to behave like an automaton. This time it announced, "Comrades and people of the Republic of Vietnam, this is to inform you of a total curfew tomorrow morning, starting at 12 a.m. and effective immediately. No one is allowed to stay outside their residence. Severe punishment will be applied for anyone who disobeys." This was announced at 10 o'clock the night before, September 22nd, 1975. Everyone was perplexed about what was going to happen. Early in the morning, at 6 o'clock, the PA was on again. "We have an important announcement today," the head district party member almost said. A really significant and important announcement, as it seemed to him that they had so many important announcements every day. This was far more important than the average importance. He was sure of that. However, his northern accent prevented him from saying the letter L correctly. Really would have become Rini in his pronunciation, and so he regretfully omitted the word Rini. Damn. Sometimes he really wanted to make them notice that one was more significant than the next, because even he, an esteemed member of the Communist Party, could not see the difference. This was real, however. He could sense the weight of his words. They were like tons of bricks, and he liked that. It made him feel really important. He was the one to deliver the blow. How about that? The magnitude of the economic change was going to knock the shit out of a lot of cocky southern capitalists, for sure. It served them right. He had no sympathy for them. Bloodsuckers of the real people like him. They were in for a nasty surprise. Everyone was, except the party members, of course, who had already got hold of the news and had managed to find some way to dodge the effects of what was to come. The currency of the previous regime is now obsolete. The transition time is for today only. Starting from tomorrow morning, all transactions involving currency are to be mainly in new dong. Each household is allowed to change a maximum amount of 200 new dong, regardless of how much they have in old dong. I repeat, regardless of how much in old dong you have in your possession. You are only allowed to receive a total of 200 new dong maximum per household. Each new dong equals 500 in old money. Bring your family ration book and all your cash to the group office of your residence so you can change. Each household is allowed one transaction. I repeat, each household is allowed one and only one. The last hour for currency change is 6 o'clock this evening. That is final, no later than that. There, he had finished his sentence with glee. He looked down at the piece of paper that even with utmost care, and through his elementary Year 5 educations, his handwriting was still childishly untidy. Bloody hell, this was so confusing. All this talk about new dong and old dong. He had had to memorize and practice reading the lines a few times last night, and he was still bewildered by what he had just said. Who could understand it all, he wondered. While holding the official letter in his hands the previous night, he already knew this was coming. Scraping up all the available cash at home, he barely got 10,000 in old dong. Damn, it was so little. All he had was equal to 20 in new currency. That was all the reward he had for being a member of the Communist Party for 20 years. It was so wrong, bloody immoral. He could not let this happen. He had to rise above this somehow. His contribution toward the victory of the unification of the country was worth more than that. When would it be his turn to reap the richness of the land, if not now? Walking up and down the office with the key directive from the central office, he racked his brains for a solution. He had to think of something urgently. This was his chance to balance the injustice. Ah! A brilliant idea emerged miraculously out of his fuddled thinking. He knew what to do now. He just needed to recruit some of his subservient underlings to carry out his plan. He jumped on his bicycle and rushed to meet them. He was sure they would gladly join in with his clever plan. They would form a pact, and with clever bookkeeping, they could manage to pocket a substantial amount by having changed more cash for people who had more than the maximum amount allowed. He would tell them that they would get 50% of the amount as commission. Indeed, he would demand 70%, and that extra 20% was solely for him. For each new dong the capitalists received, his gang would have the same amount in their pocket, and even more for himself. How clever that was. They would swear an oath to keep it a secret, and no one would find out. He was so proud of himself. He must tell his mother sometime later of this. The nutritious food and the affluent lifestyle he had allowed himself as the district officer since the fall of Saigon had paid off at last. His brain was working much better than before. For over 20 years, while fighting in the Civil War, under the esteemed leadership of Uncle Ho and his Communist Party, he was quite dumb. He had to admit it. He had followed the doctrines of equal opportunity and equal rights and worked to the maximum level of your contribution, but received the sustainable level of your requirement diligently. And what did he have? A mere 20 new dong for his life savings. It was absurd and ridiculously wrong. Later, to his amazement, it seemed every other party member had thought of a similar scheme and were reaping the cash that had come their way in unexpectedly huge amounts. So he was not the only one to turn out smarter than he used to be, after all. They had turned into clever people in the short time of living in the South. Here is the plan. He gathered his underlings around in the district office in the night and explained. We will have 2 books, one on the day and one for us. The first book is to record the real thing. The second book is to make it up. If Mrs. A had only 100 in new dong, then there was 100 extra for us in her allowance. If Mr. B gave us his cash, which was much more than his allowance, then we put his surplus into Mrs. A's column, and so on. There are 2 ways. We can ask for a commission of 50%, or we can always collect extra cash from the idiots who brought it all to us. Remember, each household is only allowed 200 in new dong, regardless of how much they are holding in their hands. Their old currency will become useless plain paper, just to wipe their ass the following day. They will agree with what you offer them, I am sure. He stopped to look around at the faces of his group, seeking agreement and understanding. Do you all understand? Any questions? They looked up at him admiringly. Wow, that's the smartest plan I've ever known, Comrade District Commander. You're the best, Comrade Commander. It's so smart. It's unbelievably clever. So if I have 40,000 in old dong, then I will only get 80 in new dong, yeah? One raised his voice and asked. He then continued. And we'll collect 160,000 in old dong from the pool, then tally it to make it equal 200 in new dong, correct? Yeah, but don't make it too obvious that all amounts equal 200, okay? Make it vary between 170 to 200, right guys? Don't let them suspect our scheme, he stressed again, feeling very brilliant about it all. The hectic day went past with a total population of approximately 25 million Southerners at that period of time. in shock at having their cash reduced even further. Some had thought they could manage to withdraw their savings from the National Bank in time before its permanent closure and keep the cash for the future. They had thought they were safe for a while at least. Obviously, nothing was safe. The change of currency had pushed hundreds of thousands of businessmen, well-off individuals, and wealthy families into the ground. Within 24 hours, their wealth and lifetime savings had gone down to a mere 200 in new dong. It was very clever indeed. The battle to abolish capitalism from the government was so swift and brutal that no one was able to avoid it. The ideal of equal opportunity from the madness of communist doctrine was carried out at the expense of the lifetime savings and family wealth of the citizens of the South. Ironically, the battle gave birth to another class of capitalist, the communist capitalists who emerged out of their corruption to rule the wayward country of Vietnam. In the incongruity of it all, the communists were already contradicting themselves. In the process of abolishing capitalism, the Vietnamese Chinese businessmen were among the most targeted group. Many of them had been stripped of their properties not long before. Anyone who had more than one house was automatically branded as a capitalist, and his or her properties were inevitably seized. Many houses, factories, and businesses were confiscated from the hands of their owners by the sheer force of the law of the people. Many were evicted from their mansions in the middle of the night by a mere piece of paper from the central office of the Vietnamese Communist Party. With the currency change, many suicides occurred among overwrought and depressed middle-aged and elderly men and women whose minds snapped at seeing the fruits of a lifetime taken away from them. The shock of facing the future destitute was too much for them to bear. Many had simply retreated into insanity. You know the Ciecie restaurant owner, Mac? A friend of Mac's came by and told them of the entrepreneur's fate. Ciecie was the name of a successful chain of restaurants in Gia, a Chinese town in Saigon. He started his business before 1975 from a small takeaway specializing in chicken and rice. After 20 years of labor and accumulating his wealth, he bought 3 adjacent houses on the same busy street of the commercial district of Gia. The houses were turned into one large restaurant that was famous for his special dishes. Within a few months of the invasion, he was down to almost nothing. They took all his 3 houses into their possession. The takeaway ownership was transferred to one of his relatives to avoid any more trouble from the authority. He became just another one of the workers in the restaurant. It also came to their knowledge that 3 years later, in 1978, all his family, brothers, sisters, cousins, distant relatives, 100 lives in all, were escaping on a boat that sank not far from where it started. He was the only one who survived the fateful journey by floating on debris to the nearby shore of Ben Tre. All were gone without a trace, but he remained alive. He went mad shortly after being rescued and revived. As he was without any identification papers and was insane, the locals did not know who he was. They eventually found out that he was the Ciecie restaurant owner, and so he was repatriated back to Andong, Gia. He became a vagabond, living on the streets near his once beautiful and famous restaurant. He died a few years later, very poor, desolate, and lonely, the miserable end of the life of an industrious man. Perhaps he was lucky to erase all his past tragedies and to immerse himself in a world apart, out of touch in his insanity, until his death.